Are you keen to recession-proof your business? Maybe you want to add an additional revenue stream or two, or maybe you just want to create a side hustle. Why wouldn't you? Well, I've got just the fella to help you do that. Paul Waddy is one of retail tech's brightest minds. In fact, he's just released Selling Online for Dummies, and he joins us to share how you can master e-commerce in your business. It's an e-ceptional episode 614. See what I did there? Of the 13-year-old award-winning Small Business Big Marketing podcast.
Well, I said, welcome to a small business marketing show where successful small business owners share their souls to take your marketing straight to the lead. Now, here's your host, Mr. Timbo Reid.
And welcome back to your weekly dose of masterful marketing. I'm your host, Timbo Reid, and I have an insatiable curiosity for uncovering marketing ideas that help businesses just like yours to grow. I do that through weekly in-depth conversations with successful business founders who have walked the path before us. You, infinitely more importantly, are a motivated business owner, ready to crank out some great marketing to build that beautiful business of yours into the empire it absolutely deserves to be. As per usual, team, there's marketing GOLD dripping from the ceiling over here at Small Business Big Marketing's HQ. So let's get stuck right in. Paul Waddy is an e-commerce expert and strategic advisor to some of Australia's most successful online retailers, including Showpo, The Horse, and Oz Hair and Beauty. In 2021, Paul was named number 2 in the top 50 people in e-commerce, and in 2022, he received the Industry Recognition Award at the Online Retail Industry Awards. This bloke knows what he's doing, trust me. So much so that he's such an expert in the e-commerce space that he's just released Selling Online for Dummies and Shopify for Dummies, designed to give business owners just like you the expertise to transform your e-commerce ideas into a profitable reality. Now, as an aside, and excuse me as we digress, I couldn't help myself. I Googled what are the strangest titles for Dummies books, and the top 3 are, number 1, Anger Management for Dummies. Step 1 is don't get angry when someone calls you a dummy, I'm guessing. The second weirdest title of For Dummies books, Near-Death Experiences for Dummies. I kid you not. I'm guessing step 1 is go towards the light. Step 2 is not that close. Oh boy. Yes, I'm feeling silly today. And the third weirdest title for a For Dummies book is Procrastination for Dummies. Although I'm told no one gets around to reading this one. Goodness me. Please keep listening. Please, please. This is a great episode. Enough stupidity. This is serious stuff. So settle in as Paul covers how a clever e-commerce play can recession-proof your precious business, the various ways of integrating e-commerce into an existing business, what you need to do to clear $5,000 a month after 3 months of starting an e-commerce business. Is that even possible? How to get traffic to your online store, and we cover a whole lot more. This is a great one if you've got an existing business, if you want to start a side hustle, if you want to bolt on e-commerce to what you're doing, all that stuff. It is absolutely relevant to where you're at. Here's Paul explaining what he loves about e-commerce.
I love that the average punter can get into it and make a go of it. I think part of what appealed to me about e-commerce right at the very start was that I had a few retail stores and I couldn't make them work. Fit outs costs were too big, and all the best spaces in the centre were going to the bigger retailers. And then I just found that, hang on, I can put a little bit of money into e-commerce and have a few differentiators and actually make it work. So I always call e-commerce the great leveler. It levels the playing field.
You had, what kind of retail stores did you have?
Well, I started a men's footwear business way back in 2005, but 2007 I quit my job and sort of tried to do it properly. And I started as a wholesaler, so I was selling shoes to pretty much 200 stores up and down the east and west coast of Australia and into Europe.
One thing I was interested in at the top of that question, you said e-commerce is the great leveler. And I think one of the limiting beliefs that we need to smash right now, or can we smash, is it too late? Has the boat left the shore for what you're about to share with us?
No, absolutely not. That's another one of my great, the things I love to say to people. It's not too late. I mean, The scary reality, Tim, is we could, like, me and you could start an e-commerce business today, and we could be looked back on in 10, 15, 20 years as pioneers. And that's what I'm always trying to tell people. It's still roughly 20% of total traditional retail. So it's still quite small. Everyone says, "Oh, it's done and dusted." It's not. We could start. We could still be early adopters. It's nowhere near too late. Absolutely.
I have the same view around podcasting. It's day one. In fact, it's not even day one. It's like 10 a.m. on day one. Very early days, despite the fact that podcasting has been around for about 15 years. So e-commerce the same. Another thing, because you and I are going to talk a lot about how existing businesses, particularly listeners of this podcast, Paul, a lot of bricks and mortar businesses, a lot of service providers, professional service providers, wellbeing businesses, all that kind of stuff, who have existing businesses and websites. And I want to talk to you about how they could introduce e-commerce into their business plan. However, you went from having bricks and mortar and closed it and went 100% e-commerce. So where do you sit on that?
Oh, look, I did that because I just found that the bricks and mortar was too capital intensive and just way too much pressure. And you open a store, you spend $100,000 on the fit out or more, and if it doesn't work, well, great, enjoy the rest of your 5-year lease. Whereas you can try things in e-commerce, and if they don't work, you just you scale them back or you dial up the things that do work. So where do I sit on it now? I work with retailers or businesses who have stores, omni-channel retailers who have wholesale channels. I think it can absolutely still play a part. It didn't for me in that particular part of my journey, but these different channels can complement each other if they're done strategically. There can be cannibalization if you've got stores and all these different channels and marketplaces like eBay and Amazon. Sure, there can be cannibalization, but as long as the overall incremental revenue is there, then that's okay for me. So that they can work together.
And I suppose you're opening up the world. If you're a local high street store in a particular suburb and all of a sudden you bolt on an e-commerce play, then, hey, the world's your oyster.
Well, that's the other reason that I like e-commerce is that it shrinks the world. The world's getting smaller. And a great example of that is that most of the brands or online retailers that I work with would probably be doing around 20% of their revenue in international markets. And it's generally the same markets. New Zealand is always there or thereabouts. The US, particularly the west coast of the US, loves Australian products. The UK and Germany and Canada, that's usually your top 5. I don't know why, but that's typically how it is.
Do they love Australian products or are we cheap?
That's a really interesting point, and also probably a good demonstration of how e-commerce has evolved. I think when I first started shopping online, there was always the perception that you were bargain hunting, and that's when eBay and so on was around. I don't know that we are cheap anymore overseas. Maybe it depends on, I suppose, how strong the currency is in that particular market and the conversion rate. But most of the brands that I work with are doing their price research and not necessarily changing their price just to match the foreign exchange rate. Most of them are doing some competitor research to make sure that they're sitting in a nice price point. And in some instances, that means that you're making a good margin. In other instances, it actually means you're sacrificing a little bit of margin to keep your price relative. But most of the brands I see try and sit on par with the local markets they're entering.
So I think we both agree, Paul, that bolting on an e-commerce play into an existing business can recession-proof that business, and that's particularly important right now as we head into some fairly rocky times. So we're all looking at ways of introducing additional revenue streams, of streamlining our business, of saving money, all that kind of stuff. So based on the premise that e-commerce can recession-proof a business, can we just go through some of the ways? I mean, is e-commerce, are we just talking about selling online, selling a product or a service online, or are we actually talking about other things like affiliate and drop shipping and e-courses, etc.?
Yeah, I think, there are many ways that a digital strategy, and I say digital strategy because it should encompass service-based businesses as well, can recession-proof a business. I mean, let's talk just retail very quickly, but, retail has tremendous overheads, as would a lot of service-based businesses as well. One of the great things about e-commerce is typically the operating expenses are lower. Not always, but typically they are. So straight away, we're looking, facing a recession. What are we trying to do? Cut costs. That's one of the first things that we're trying to do. Or the marketing dollars that we have, we're trying to make them go further and have a higher conversion rate. So I think let's talk about service-based businesses now and how they could be using a digital strategy to recession-proof their business. Well, I think it's getting smarter about your marketing. And one of the and we all need marketing unless we're one of those unicorn businesses that just, customers come in and from nowhere, but we all need marketing. You do get tremendous cut through in digital marketing because you can seek out the people who are intending to use your service, as opposed to putting the billboard on the side of the road and hoping that, mum or dad is driving their child to school and sees it and goes, oh, I need an accountant. Well, what we can actually do is dive down and search for the people who try and show our ads or our products or our services to the people who are searching for accountants in Queensland, accountants in Brisbane. So the marketing dollars can go further. So the efficiency and the efficacy of your marketing spend needs to be laser focused to recession-proof your business, because we don't have dollars to throw around. But at the same time, in a recession, sales can be harder to get hold of. So we need to make sure that we're still going after sales, because people will start watching their wallets. I mean, think about other ways that a digital strategy could recession-proof your business. Well, not just on the marketing front, but
can I just get some clarity? I'm having a seniors moment. Digital strategy, e-commerce play. In my mind, an e-commerce play is clearly about selling online. A digital strategy could include an e-commerce play, but it also includes all the other marketing stuff that we should be doing, the content marketing, the Facebook ads, this and that. So,
well, exactly, Tim. So I'm now thinking of the plumber who I just saw at the house we're building this morning, and thinking, well, look, he's not going to sell spanners and washers online, probably, and might be thinking, well, it's not for me, but it is for him. And so when I say digital strategy, I say, well, we don't necessarily have a commodity that we're selling over the internet, but we're using a digital strategy like Google AdWords, like Facebook ads, to attract more customers. So, and this is also something that I talk about in my book. E-commerce is not just about selling products. More and more people we know the yellow pages have pretty much been ditched. What do people do? They Google services now, or they're browsing Facebook. 50% of Aussies, or whatever it is, browsing Facebook, and they're getting served ads for wedding venues or plumbers or builders. So e-commerce isn't just about products. So when I talk about a digital strategy, I'm sort of thinking of someone listening to this who might be sort of saying, well, I'm a CBD accountant, I couldn't use a e-commerce, but absolutely
well, let's work our way through. Let's do a bit of role-playing, Paul, based on various different categories that I know listen to this podcast. So let's start with wellbeing practitioners. We're talking like a physio, an intravenous clinic, a masseur. How would they introduce an e-commerce play? Are we going to use the word e-commerce? We're going to use the word digital strategy into their business.
We'll say e-commerce. Let's keep it.
Well, you've written Dummies for e-commerce for dummies, mate, so we may as well stay focused.
We'll use that then, yeah.
So wellbeing practitioners, how do they introduce an e-commerce play?
They've got a great advantage over somebody that's just selling a product, because people buy from people. So when I come across businesses like that, my advice to them straight away is, give me some tips. Because let's say you're in wellness or whatever, and I go along and I'm getting acupuncture or something. You're going to sit in the chair and you're going to say, so how does this work? So when you put the needles in my eyebrows, how does that help me? There's always chit chat in the salon, there's chit chat in the massage chair, there's chit chat. So what I'd be saying to those people is, get the iPhone out, turn the camera on yourself, get your social media channels open and start talking, build a profile. And trust is so important in wellness. So I think those people have the opportunity to turn around and every Tuesday say, right, Tuesdays with Tim, I'm going to talk about how acupuncture improves your heart health or something like that. And you just turn the camera on yourself and you give little bits of information. And what that does is it builds you an online reputation, and it builds you a community. And then your job after building that online community, you can later work out how to monetize that. But you can absolutely build a loyal following of people who see you as a thought leader. And that's essentially what influencers are, right? They're people who are massive following. So I love service businesses using social media.
Yeah. So do I. I mean, I've written a book about helpful marketing, which is essentially what you're talking about, that whole concept of educating prospects so that they can make a more informed purchase decision, offer in your favor. Just on the wellbeing practitioner idea, physio, masseur, whatever it may be, what about the idea of them introducing a store to their website where they're selling oils and various instruments that you can massage yourself and all that kind of stuff? Is that kind of playing at the edges, or could it be actually potentially a seriously good income?
It could absolutely be a seriously good income. How many good businesses have started. So again, if you've got the audience and you're a beautician in Sydney or something like that, and you sort of got a regular stream of customers, but then you've got a YouTube following that has 10,000 people, or Instagram that has 5,000, you've done the hard part. You've got the audience. So the natural progression is to sort of say, well, I'm not going to buy those eyelash extensions off that supplier anymore. I'm going to actually do them myself and in my own brand. So as long as it's relevant and it follows the journey. So where people go wrong is, like, let's say me and you are sitting here, Tim, and we know nothing about surfing, but we go, we're going to start a surf school and we're going to get all our clients online. No, it has to be a natural progression. So the massage therapist has to sell the massage gun, the massage parts, the band, the physio band. So there has to be a natural, I finish my session, I want to be able to do this at home, here's the product that we need. So, and then of course, when you've got that customer database, it's very easy to start emailing those customers and gently upselling them onto other products. So a natural progression like that, you could end up making, 20, 30, 40, 50% of your revenue by selling products. That's a great way to go about easing into product sales.
What about the limiting belief of the wellness practitioners that may be listening, and any other professional services really that's listening, saying, well, I haven't got a very big audience. I've got a customer database of 220 customers that I've, serviced over the last 12 months. What do you say to that? I know Seth Godin talks about having 1,000 raving fans, and, even 1,000 seems a lot for some small businesses, but obviously you've got to embark on a digital marketing strategy. Do you just start when you've only got 100, 200 on your list? Well,
you got to start somewhere. And I'm going to use the example of a great wedding business out there, Wedded Wonderland. Wendy is somebody who built this community of followers, and she just provides wedding tips and things like that. She's got about 1 or 2 million followers, but they're not selling products at all, Tim. But what she's doing is showing great photos, and she's providing advice, and she's showcasing things. And I spoke to her, and she's talking about, we're going to launch this e-commerce business. Once you've got the audience, you just need to keep building it. So I would say to that person who's got 200 followers or email subscribers is, at all costs, get the data. So get the email signups. Every single person that walks through, even if it's, hey, listen, how about I send you your receipt digitally so I've got your email? Do you mind just joining the database? Get their details. Get them on the database. We can work out how to monetize it later. But one of the fastest ways to grow your audience, it doesn't matter if some of the most obscure businesses are doing well online. You could be a mechanic that's providing tips on social media as to how to change your oil. You could be a personal trainer who doesn't sell a single product, but gives how to build big shoulders. Build the following by telling people what you're good at and positioning yourself as a thought leader. Once you've got a following, you can work out how to monetize it. You can sell almost anything online. I just bought a shoe goof to stick the soles onto my shoes. We can work out
what to sell. You bought that online?
Yeah, I bought this on Amazon.
Go down to the local hardware store, buddy. They don't exist anymore, but you know what I mean.
I try and look for one. They don't. Right. But I was like, I'll just check it out online. And that's the point. I thought, where could I buy a shoe goo? It's called shoe goo. Well, I'll just Google it. And then sure enough, Amazon had it and it was there the next day. People are searching for everything online. You might as well put yourself out there.
E-commerce for cafes, Paul?
Well, that might be a challenge.
I reckon it is. Well, you can introduce a coffee brand or something, I suppose.
Well, I do have two coffee businesses that I work with, and here's why. One of them shut down during COVID, right? They had a cafe in Sydney and they were wholesaling, but all the cafes shut down. So what they started doing was they said, I need to make some money. And by the way, heaps of businesses did this during COVID. Who said, we're making no money. Heaps of big businesses. How can we make money online? I had a lot of those calls. So what this guy wanted to do is spin up a website, and that coffee that he used to wholesale to cafes, he wanted to start wholesaling it to individuals. He needed to find a way to get by. Now, what happened there was he started developing this thriving wholesale, direct-to-consumer wholesale business instead of B2B, and it became a whole new division for him. So the cafe can do two things, right? They can, one, use digital marketing like Google AdWords and social media and so on to attract customers in. Hey, come and see us. We've got the friendliest barista. We make coffees using this milk. So there's showcasing your business so that people will come in. The second challenge for that cafe is to say, righto, we've got our customers that come in. How can we go beyond these four walls and maybe start to deliver products? Or maybe they can use e-commerce to book their coffee in so that it's ready for them at 9 a.m. There's no limits to it.
Yeah, like that. It has always been a tough one, the cafe one, but I certainly like those two ideas. Now, let's continue the role play, Paul, and this could be interesting. This could be really easy or really embarrassing. You and I want to create an e-com side hustle that's going to net $5,000 a month within 3 months. A, is it doable? And B, what would we do? I'm happy to contribute here, the ideas, but I'm fascinated again because, hey, here's an opportunity for a whole lot of people if they listen in to, create something, a little side hustle.
You and I in that role play scenario, Tim, is what my book is designed for. And the whole premise of it is read the 20 chapters, and by the time you get to the end, you're pressing go live on a store. So let's go back to the first question. Is it possible? Absolutely. So I've done that many times before. So I've got one client who had an online business that wasn't working, and she was selling pajamas. And they weren't going very well. She was trying really hard, and she was spending money on Facebook. But Tim, she was making no money. She was netting negative. She was spending a couple of $100 a day on Facebook and losing money. So she was right. So what we did is we rejigged that completely, and within 90 days, she got to $40,000 a month. $40,000 with 20 to 25% net profit within 3 months. Now, as we speak at the moment, that business is probably approaching at 6 months. It's 6 months, and it's on track for 60,000 net of GST in month 6. Absolutely, you can do it. So our first job, Tim, would be to find supply and demand, find that product. What we don't want to do is say, what we're going to do is we're going to do another T-shirt brand. What we want to do is solve a problem. So if me and Tim are sitting having a couple of beers and thinking, Eureka, we've got it, we found it, it's, whatever our idea is, we do a little bit of research to see, now, me and Tim reckon it's good, but are people actually searching for that in Google? And that's the beauty of e-commerce as well. I could tell you what people are searching for. How good is that data? We don't have to guess anymore. We can actually say, Tim, DVD pliers, oh no, terrible idea, no one's searching for them. Or we could say, flowers online, gee, that's booming, I wonder why. So we can actually put what's called keyword research behind it to sort of validate our idea, Tim, before we waste money buying the stock, which is almost like shooting fish in a barrel. It's like, we've got an idea, pretty quickly, I can tell you whether it's a stinker or whether it's a good one. But $5,000 a month, walk in the park, Tim, if we found the right product, we could do it.
Don't excite me. Well, I use the 5,000 because it seems achievable, doable, and if you can do 5, then 20 doesn't seem very far away. But at the same time, I feel naive even saying this because what you're saying, if this is doable, is that it's money tree is not the right word because there's work to be done and smarts to be had, right? But it does seem like, hey, we are heading into tough times, and if this is possible, then a book like yours, E-commerce for Dummies, which I want to get to at some point. We're covering the content anyway in this chat, but I'm fascinated that you've written such a tome. But it's exciting. So, okay, before we head into step 2, Paul, of that process of creating an e-commerce play that's doing $5,000 net a month within 3 months, Niching. Talk to me about niching. Is it like I interviewed a fellow a few weeks ago. It was about drop shipping. This guy, I love this story. He's an Irishman living in Italy who's a vegetarian, and he sells e-bikes to hunters.
That's a niche. It's found a niche.
So that is niche. So what's your view on a tighter niche as possible, or being more broad?
Here's the thing. Tighter niche as possible is always good as long as the demand is there. So, and again, so if someone comes to me and they say, "Look, I've found an issue. Regional Australians can't get hold of flowers, whatever, when they want to send it, whatever the niche is." I'll do a little bit of research, and we can actually say, "Yeah, look, that's getting 100,000 searches a month," or "Look, that's getting 20,000 searches a month. If we got 5% of that," you can quickly run the numbers and see that is just not going to add up. So I've worked with businesses who are single product businesses that have scaled to $20 million. So there's one there that is solving a problem of crying babies. She developed, this lady developed a product that soothes crying babies.
Is that Snotty Noses?
No, it's not. It's Riff Raff & Co., which is a great business, and she'll be on track for $20 million. Got to 10 million run rate, kept going, and as you point out, Tim, it's scalable. It's not like you're sort of confined by the four walls of a store. You sort of go, "Oh, well, we're doing well here. What about New Zealand? Or what about the US? Or, gee, we've got the baby toy. What's the next product? Do we do the lunchbox for when they grow up?" So it's so scalable. But I think the niche, I like a niche because for me, my advice to people considering e-commerce is don't try and do what everyone else is doing. Like if you're listening to this thinking, "Oh, I'm going to do a women's fashion brand." Unless you've got $1 million those online businesses, Tim, they spend $1 million a month on Facebook ads. $1 million a month, those big e-commerce
those big ones, like a Shopify or something.
Exactly. And that's exactly where I've come from. So we were spending big money and ultra competitive. So I chatted to a guy last week on the scooter front who electric kicks. He developed electric scooters and so on. So what he's done is he's identified a niche that's still pretty small, but he's banking on that growing because it's good for no carbon emissions. It's electric. The cities are getting overcrowded. He thinks cars will be a thing of the past. I totally get that. He's found a niche that he's investing in now that will pay dividends. Another one, Sam's Drinks or Drummer Boy, non-alcoholic spirits. A little bit small at the moment, but gee, it's growing quickly. And we can find those tools to see if search volume is growing. So I've got to say, I'm a bit of a sucker for a niche.
Righto, so we've done our keyword research. We've found a product. We're solving a problem. Just last question on keyword research. Are you using something like SEMrush, or are you just using Google keyword tool?
Well, if you're listening to this and you don't know what SEMrush is, and that's a great one, Tim, just jump onto trends.google.com and you'll actually see what people are Googling. That's a great little tool.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Step 2, Paul, on our way to our $1 million.
Yeah. We've raised it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
What's next?
Well, okay. And let's talk about that 3-month plan, Tim. The hardest part of that 3-month plan is finding the product. So we've got to take our time to find that product. So right at this point, I've been doing 2.5 years of research on an eco-friendly toothbrush that's made of thermoplastic elastomer. Why have I spent 2.5 years? Because I know that when I can launch that's going to go bang. So that's the first thing I'll say. The R&D phase is the time-consuming phase. The next thing to do, though, when we think we've got our product, Tim, is we're going to open a store. My preference is Shopify. Why? Because you can do it on a 14-day free trial. It's going to cost us bugger all, Tim. We're going to chuck in $20 each or something, and we'll have a store, and we can do it ourselves.
So just to be clear, and you've written the dummy Shopify for Dummies book as well. Just to be clear, Shopify is a content management system 100% dedicated to e-commerce stores.
Yeah, correct. So it's the engine room. It's the thing that you will use to build and design your website.
We've found a product, and now we've opened a Shopify store. 14-day trial. easy to sort of start. It's drag and drop type stuff. It's not. You don't need to be a coder.
No coding. No, it's a code-free zone, Tim. At our level, honestly, we could spin up in 2 days, 3 days. We could spin up a beautiful-looking store that people will say, "Oh, you spent 20 grand on that." And that would be our next stop. And we would want to design a website that has a great user experience that's conducive to a high conversion rate. People are going to, and by the way, our goal there, Tim, when we open that store, we've got one thing in mind. That is to bring the customer or the visitor to the product that they are most likely to buy in as few clicks as possible. We don't want to take them around the world through a convoluted navigation of clicking. 50% of website visitors bounce, Tim. We got their attention for a split second. We need to get them to that product.
Hence Jeff Bezos's book, One Click.
Yeah, correct. Exactly. So we got to be as few clicks as possible with this site we're building.
Are we finding one product? You mentioned, you've got what was that lady? Riff Raff and Co. They've got one product. I've interviewed a couple of more than a couple of e-commerce players over the years, but one comes to mind, which is Power Planter. He discovered a drill bit that makes it easier to plant seedlings, and that's all he sells, and he's smashing it. I mentioned Snotty Noses before. Laura Klein's been on the show. She started with the battery-powered snot sucker for young babies who have got a cold and can't breathe properly or sleep properly. She started off with that. She has expanded. I don't think Power Planter has expanded, but Snotty Noses has now got about 20 products that help babies sleep. So what's your view? Is it about, first of all, in the first stage, finding one product and doing it really well?
Yeah, so that drilling example, that's a great one because I couldn't tell you anywhere I've ever seen that before. The second one's great as well because I've seen the manual snotty pump thing, and now obviously the next step is to go to the automated one. The challenge, though, that people have to try and stay away from a little bit, Tim, is to sort of say, "Oh, Tim, I've got a jacket here. It's really good. I've got it in black and we're going to do it in red. Just 2 products and we're going to kill it." It's not going to happen. The drill one there, to be honest, he doesn't need to think about another product for a while because he's solving a problem. He's probably got no competition.
He probably has now. It's a great story, and I'll put a link in the show notes, but it's such a great story because it came about through, he's a photographer, commercial photographer by trade, but he's got some property outside of Sydney, and he bought on eBay on a whim 1,000 bulbs, if like sunflowers or daffodils or something.
Yeah.
And they arrived, and he then realised, I need to plant 1,000 bulbs. It's like, this is not a good idea. Manually, it's going to be really difficult. So anyway, long story short, he actually found this power plant drill bit in the States, of which he then bought the license to and brought it out here. And I think now he manufactures themselves. But yeah, solving a personal problem, always.
But that's how it starts. I love that. And he had that aha moment. He probably went to bed dreaming about it, thinking, I've just got it. I've got it. And when you, and I say this to businesses sometimes that go awry, they go off track a little bit. I always say, go back to what you thought about when you started your business. What did you go to bed dreaming about? And usually it was a product. And then sometimes the business goes wrong and then they start going to bed dreaming about their Facebook ad spend or their Google AdWords or something. But it all starts with the aha moment in the product.
We've got our Shopify store. This all sounds incredibly easy. If I look at my steps, find a product, solve a problem, find a product, do your keyword research. You'll need to stock that product. Well, that's an interesting point. Stocking, drop shipping, what are we doing here? What's the easiest option to start with?
Look, I'm going to tell you that most drop shipping businesses fail. The vast majority, I reckon 99%, because there's not a lot of good information out there on how to do them. But I always say to people, do I recommend it? Yep, I do, because it's a really good way to build your first e-commerce site without spending money on stock, because I can guarantee you one thing, Tim, you'll get your first one wrong. So dropshipping is a great way to cut your teeth in e-commerce. In terms of scaling businesses to 20, 30, 40, 50 million and beyond, I would control the inventory. Why? And by control the inventory, I mean buy it. Now, why would I do that? Because one of the biggest issues in e-commerce is the logistics aspect. I can promise you one thing, if you've got an online store, your number one ticket from a customer, by ticket I mean inquiry, will be, where's my order? So I like to control that. The second thing is, some of these drop shippers, you'll get the parcel and it'll have Chinese writing on it and it'll have masking tape all over it. You can't put your stamp on that at all. Whereas if you take a little bit of time and get beautiful packaging and take some time in the unboxing experience, that's also how you start to develop trust and a bit of a following. So Tim, me and you, we would be packing our first orders in the living room, putting a ribbon on them and dressing them up nicely and sending them out and emailing the customer, hey, what did you think? It's on the way. We can't forget that. So for that reason, we would be buying a small amount of stock to start with.
And that whole customer experience thing there, Paul, for personally, I reckon that's the exciting part. It's the rewarding part. It's enjoyable. It feels a little bit, influencer, dressing it all up and doing all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, who doesn't love a good customer experience and who's not going to tell others about it?
Well, you know what, Tim, that's a good one. And no matter how big you get, and this is also for your service people that might be listening, an email from the owner goes a long, long way. You'd be surprised. A little handwritten note. Hey, we notice you've been a customer for a long time. People will take a photo of it. They'll share it on their social media. So it's important never to lose touch of that. So if we start with the handwritten notes in our little business, Tim, I'd say that in 5 years when we're doing $30 million a year, I'd like to think we're still sitting in the living room writing a few handwritten notes from time to time.
Mate, I just like to think about the $30 million a year. I like that. But just on that point, I interviewed a fellow only last night. He owns a company in New York that makes ball chain. Those tiny little silver balls that they create cords on blinds and fans, and that's his business. Does 3 million feet of it a week. He's the fourth generation. He's the president of that business. He's got 120 staff. He still puts his name and mobile number on all products that go out to customers, both B2B and B2C. He doesn't get swamped, despite the fact how the business is a big business. But when he does get a text or a phone call, it's always really good news. It's always like, hey, thank you.
I think that's great. I love that. And if that's worked for us at the start, Tim, why would we give up on it?
That's right. Yeah, 100%. Righto. So Shopify. And then I guess the fourth step of this little role play, Paul, is a digital marketing strategy, is getting the word out there.
Yeah. And look, attracting customers and then retaining them. So two different parts of marketing there. So a question I get asked a lot, Tim, is, okay, I've got a product in, I've built a store. How much do I need to spend on marketing? This is a hard question to answer, but I'm just going to mention very quickly my 50-30-20 rule. What that means is, if we're doing this business, Tim, we're looking for a product that has a gross margin of over 50%. In the gross margin, I include the freight cost to the customer, and I include the merchant fees. So when we're scouring the internet looking for products, we're looking for a 70% intake margin, 70% margin on the product, 50% gross margin with the other cost of sales applied. Now, then what we're going to try and do is run this business of ours, Tim, on a 30% operating expense model. So 30% is what we've given ourselves. That's going to leave us with the 20 element, 50-30-20. The 20% will be left as net profit. In that 30%, I would like to think that we're spending no more than 15% of our revenue back into digital marketing. By digital marketing, I mean Google AdWords and Facebook ads and TikTok and all of that sort of stuff. No more than 15%. If we're going up to 20, we're going to probably allow that, Tim. We might even say in the early days we're going to sacrifice profit just to get ahead. So we're actually going to take our marketing spend up to 30% to get some traction. And me and Tim are not taking wages. But as we want to start to take wages, yeah, I got the raw end of that deal. So Tim's taking his wages. I'm not. After a while, I say, Tim, I want some wages too. We got to bring that marketing spend down to 15%. No more than that. Anything over 20% in digital marketing, I'm starting to sweat.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds pretty good. I like the 50-30-20 rule. All right, buddy. That's a pretty good insight. I mean, we make it sound simple, but for the sake of a 40-minute, 50-minute interview, we can't go into great detail. But where you have gone into a lot of detail is pretty mind-blowing. You've written not one, but two for Dummies books. Now, I don't think I need to explain to anyone what a Dummies book is. But what I would like to understand is, before you tell me why you did it and how you did it on such a detailed two industries, Shopify and e-commerce, that change every friggin' hour, so how that book remains updated. But what is the Dummies series? How does that work? And how do you be invited to be an author, or do you buy a license? How's it work?
Yeah, really good question. And I probably should have spoken to you before I wrote these books, Tim, because they're a lot harder than what I thought, as you would well know.
No doubt.
The Dummies conversation happened. I always wanted to write a book. I wasn't great at school. I wasn't particularly academic. I wasn't interested, but I could write. I could communicate through writing. So I wanted to write. And I had a friend who wrote a book, and I said to him, how was that? Who published it for you? And he said, Wiley. You should speak to Wiley. I said, they're not going to want to speak to me. But okay, so I spoke to Wiley, that's the name of the publisher. And they said, yeah, what's your idea for a book? And I said, well, I'm in e-commerce. I'm a consultant. I generally advise to bigger businesses turning over 20 million, 30 million, up to 150 million a year. But I get a lot of inquiries from people in the smaller end of town who are starting out, or they're doing $1 million, they want to make 5 million, and they really shouldn't pay someone like me. It's just because they don't have the team to execute. And so, but I reckon there needs to be like a Dummies guide to e-commerce. And she said, the lady on the other end of the phone said, oh, you know that we own that license. I said, no, I had no idea of that, but that's just what I was picturing. And she said, would you be interested in writing a Dummies book? And I said, yeah, would I? Of course I would. And then I had to submit some writing and so on. And then she said, well, could you start with selling online for dummies? And then could you do a mini version of Shopify? Because that's a really trending platform that's not been done by dummies before. And then she said, that mini book, could you make that a big book as well? So there's two Dummies books, there's a big and a small. So both of them ended up being big. And then she said, could you write them both at the same time? And I just kept saying, yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, no worries. And then I had no idea what I was getting into. But I got it done, lots of late nights, lots of early starts. And seeing it come through and getting my first copy was extremely rewarding.
No doubt.
And then starting to see people send me in photos. I bought the book, My big goal with this, Tim, is that I'm craving those moments where somebody sends it in and says, hey, here's my store. I started it using your book and I'm making $5,000 a month. I'd be so happy with that. That was my goal.
They are super rewarding. I fortunately now, after 13 years, get a lot of emails like that. Listen to your podcast, implemented the ideas. I mean, it's all very well to listen, but they've taken action and, they share the results, and that's super exciting. You, man, big challenge. Writing those two books, the e-com, the online business for dummies would appear to be slightly easier than Shopify. Where like Shopify is just one of those things. I mean, with all respect, isn't that book going to date within months?
Yeah, you've nailed it. I mean, what would happen in the writing process is that I'd submit a chapter. I'd start working on my next chapter, and then the editor would come and say, great, Paul, here are your edits for the last chapter you did. And then she'd say, could you check in Shopify, that green save button, is that in the top right corner? And I'd have to log into one of my accounts and I'd say, they've actually put it in the left corner now, and then things would change. So that was a technical guide that needs to be so accurate. Click here, click there. Selling online for dummies is more my opinion on e-commerce and what you should do to make it work. So in a way, Tim, there's no wrong answers there. It's just my opinion.
yeah, that's right.
I prefer writing that one, if I'm honest.
But I think too, books like that, it is about the fundamentals and understanding the theory behind it and how things work, much versus, hey, that green button's no longer in the top right-hand corner. That doesn't really matter. You'll find it, it's for dummies.
You work that out. I wanted to make this book about, like what you and I were talking about then, Tim, is like, okay, so how do we design the store? Yeah, I'll tell you how to design the store, but actually I'm just going to go off Shopify for a minute and I'm going to tell you how to price your products. Or I'm going to tell you about my 50-30-20 rule. So what I try and do is, yes, keep it about Shopify, but also give you tips on how to find trending products, how to price them, how much to spend on advertising. So it's combining e-com fundamentals with like, oh, here are the keys to a new Shopify store. So it's trying to balance those two approaches, which was quite a lot of fun, to be honest.
Shopify for Dummies is out. I've got it on my bookshelf. It's quite significant. Any impact on your personal brand, Paul, yet? Are you finding more opportunities coming your way, media, consulting? What's happened, just out of interest?
On Monday, somebody from Canada reached out through my website and said, could we have you on Canadian TV? Now, Shopify was founded in Canada, so I was pretty happy about that. So yesterday I was on TV in Canada at very early hour of the morning here talking about Shopify. And I said, how did you hear about me? And she said, well, someone in our studio went to Toronto Library and picked up the book and thought, oh, let's talk to this guy. And so that's happening a lot. But pleasing for me, I get messages on Instagram or I'm new to Instagram, but I do most of my stuff through LinkedIn. Hey, I just wanted to clarify your 50-30-20 rule. I love that. And I love getting into it, and I will absolutely reply to those. And then from other ends of the spectrum, someone will say, oh, I listened to you on a podcast. My makeup brand's doing $10 million a year, but our profit's a bit low. We want help getting our profit up. So yeah, getting smashed at the moment, Tim, which is great. But you got to make hay while the sun shines. We are in a golden age of e-com, so I'm just embracing it.
I'm fascinated for you to say you're new to Instagram. Now, how old are you?
I turned 40 last week.
40. So you are right in their sights. You're new to Instagram. You are in e-commerce. Talk to me about your social media behaviour.
Well, so I know how to advise an e-commerce strategy that includes social media, and I know how to make those channels work for you. A personal thing of mine, Tim, is I like to spend my minutes in my day treat them as valuable, and I simply did not see social media as being a valuable use of my time.
Really?
Yeah, believe it or not, and I will preach that. And I was a little bit bittersweet when I went onto Instagram. Now, why did I do it? Is because I've written a book for people who probably aren't on LinkedIn with existing businesses. They're probably drop shippers, or they're wanting to start, or that audience simply lives on Instagram. So for me, one of my favorite sayings is fish where the fish are. I've launched this book. I'm also launching a Learn e-commerce training program. I needed to get on Instagram and share a bit of info. So it's at Paul Waddy e-commerce if anyone wants to join, but it's not sharing anything private about me or my family. It's simply e-commerce tips, and it's an e-commerce hub.
I think we share the same view, and I often, when I'm doing a keynote in front of a bunch of small business owners and they want to hear about social media, my first comment is, listen, I hate it. As a father of 3 growing up children now, but, those teenage years were not easy given social media. So I hate it. But then as someone who represents and supports small business, it is pretty amazing because it gives you channel to market, incredible targeting, real-time conversations with those who may buy from you or who do buy from you. So there is a lot of upside. Do you then, as an e-commerce specialist, Paul, when it comes time to use social media, you're pretty brutal about it, and it's like, yeah, you share what you need to and you get out of there. You're not flicking.
Nah, if you give me a follow, I'll tell you right now, I'm not following you back. I'm not interested in what you had for breakfast or where you're going on the weekend. I use it as businesses should, as a tool for growing an audience and for providing some sort of benefit if someone follows me. I don't think anyone wants to see how my hair's parted today. I think if I can give a tip about my 50-30-20 rule, or here's one of my clients who's doing really well. So I do not see it as a part of my leisurely life. I see it as a necessary evil that can be a great commercial tool.
We won't be on our deathbeds going, geez, I wish I'd made a couple more posts on the old
exactly
facing.
Right. We will not.
How was your hair parted, just out of interest? I can't.
Just up and to the side at the moment.
Yeah, that's right. There you go, buddy. Hey, listen, Paul, thanks for taking us inside this world of e-commerce. And I think we've personally upfront to know that the boat hasn't left the shore. I think it's really important for anyone listening. Don't take that defeatist attitude. Oh, it's too late. Should have got into it years ago. I think that thinking applies across any digital marketing, whether it be podcasting or YouTubing or creating an e-commerce play. It's still early days. And as you say, we will look back in 10, 15 years' time as pioneers. If people want to find out about you, Paul, it's Paul Waddy That's a DY.com. You've got a course coming out, Learn e-commerce, but everything I'm sure we'll be able to find over at paulwaddy.com.
Yeah, you find all roads lead to Rome. paulwaddy.com will get you to where you need to be, or at Paul Waddy e-commerce on Instagram if you're on there. But there's one parting thing I'd like to say. If anybody's listening to this, anybody's thinking, I don't have a product or whatever, because I'm picturing the accountant, the solicitor, whatever. Now, presumably you're in business because you reckon you're probably a bit better than the rest. You've got an edge. You're good with people, or you're better at tax, or you're better at... Turn the phone around, get the iPhone out, turn it around, give people free tips. You watch them come to you. You watch your goal. If you're listening, start building your audience. Monetizing the audience comes later and is easier.
paulwaddy.com. You're a good man.
Thanks, Tim.
There you go, team. E-commerce specialist Paul Waddy. I hope you got plenty of implementable ideas from that chat. I certainly did. For even more inspiration, you'll find links to interviews I've done with other e-commerce specialists over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com/614. And I got to tell you, there's some absolute rippers there, really inspirational stuff. What was your big takeaway? Let me know by calling the Small Business Big Marketing hotline on 0480 015 150. And be sure to leave your business name and website for some gratuitous self-promotion, like long-time listener and motivated business owner James did.
Hey, Timbo. It is James from Bicycle Bodega. I have to say that your podcast is probably one of the few podcasts I listen to when it comes to business and entrepreneurship. Obviously, the marketing is a big part of that. I usually listen when I'm exercising, so my mind is 100% focused. I have taken some of your stuff on board. And of course, there's a lot of work in implementing everything that's on your podcast, but it's all absolute gold, and I absolutely love listening to your podcast. A little bit about Bicycle Bodega. We are actually Sydney's highest rated bicycle shop in Sydney. All the www.bicyclebodega.com.au, and you can suss that out yourself. I started during COVID when we all moved home, work from home that was. And I started on my balcony, $25, cash in hand, a bit of a side hustle, just fix your flat tire. And then it just kept growing and building and building. And before I knew it, my day job was interfering with my side hustle. So with my wife's help, I made the decision to quit my day job and pursue it full time. So we moved into a house which had an amazing space where I can run my business. And I just keep growing, and I'm very happy with where we are, and I look forward to the future. 100% to the moon, Bicycle Bodega. My biggest thing is that I don't have a retail address, so a lot of suppliers will not touch me. So my biggest hurdle, which I'm slowly starting to get past right now through drop shipping, my biggest hurdle is finding distributors who are willing to sell to me. With no retail address and no rotating stock. I didn't come into this job with any capital, so I can't afford to buy 100 bikes or tools or accessories at that bulk amount that distributors want you to. So I buy what I need when I need it, and I've managed to score a couple of little deals with distributors, and even buy some of their warranty return bikes, and I fix and resell those as secondhand. So that's my biggest issue. If you have any advice on how a little guy like me can really convince the big brand wholesalers and distributors that I am worth it, I would love to hear that. But I mean, my ratings speak for themselves. It's a passion, not a paycheck. And I think that's the difference that sets Bicycle Bodega apart. Thanks, mate.
Hey, James, thank you, buddy, for taking the time to ring the Small Business Big Marketing hotline. Great business you've got going there. Well done. Sometimes COVID has been a blessing to some business owners, not to all, I get it. And if you are hurting from the pandemic, I'm so sorry, but I hope things are looking up for you. James, you've done some great stuff. 3 ways to get the attention of the big brand wholesalers. Great question. Number 1, act and look like a big brand, visually, in your copy, in your speed of response, generally in the way you go about doing business. You know, as business owners these days, thanks to the marketing tools we have at hand, we can look so much bigger than we are. Idea number 2 for getting in front of the big brand wholesalers, James, make an effort to meet with them face to face. Then they can see that you're a motivated business owner and not some tire kicker. And to do that, here's idea number 3. You need to listen to episode 482 with Stu Haneke. He's the author of 2 fantastic books, which I've got, and they're amazing. First one's called Get That Meeting, and the other one's called How to Get a Meeting with Anyone. They are absolutely fantastic books. I will put a link in the show notes. And also listen to episode 452 with Steve Sims, who explains how he got Elton John as a client. He talks a lot about getting past the Dobermans and getting in front of the decision maker. Great episodes. I'll put them all over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com/614. Everyone else, be like James. Call me on 0480 015 150 and let me know what's happening in your business. I would love to hear from you. Got some great guests coming your way in the coming weeks. We'll catch up with Jay Bayer, one of my marketing heroes. In fact, he's responsible for helping me articulate the whole concept of helpful marketing. Plus, we'll hear from the Today Show's Chief of Staff, who's going to explain how you can get yourself and your business on TV and whether it's actually worthwhile at all. Interesting question. I'm guessing he thinks it is. If there's a business owner you'd love me to chat with, then email me, tim@timreid.com.au. And if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button on your favourite podcast app. It helps me immensely. You'll also find 613 more chats with successful founders on that podcast app. This show was stitched together by editor extraordinaire Alex Amster. Thank you, Alex. The music bed written, sung, and produced by our very own in-house rock star, Lockie Dolly. Thanks, Lockie. Most importantly to you, thank you so much for tuning in. May your marketing be the absolute best marketing. Bye for now.